Everybody, I want to talk about acupuncture and whether or not there's science to prove it. As a physician practicing this science for the last 20 years, it's really amazing to me how many people come to me and they're like, oh, I want to try acupuncture, or I'm afraid to try acupuncture, or I'm not really sure it works. I'm not sure I buy into it. And I'm here to tell you acupuncture is not for sale. It's not the tooth fairy. It doesn't matter whether you believe it in or not. 5,000 years is probably the strongest test of time for any medical intervention on this planet. Something that stood the test of time for 5,000 years without zero side effects and has been reproducible is about as strong as you're going to get in terms of an effective, safe treatment. Compare that to pharmaceuticals, which have been around 100 years, and we're seeing more chronic disease and inflammatory diseases and the lack of cures than maybe we've ever seen. I would suggest to those people skeptical of acupuncture, you show the same skepticism for pharmacology, which kind of means sorcery if you look up the root word. If it's hocus pocus, it probably goes more towards that and not the science of acupuncture. Fortunately, Western medicine has tried to prove or disprove acupuncture's effectiveness, and in doing so, they've proved it over and over again. So if your general practitioner or your orthopedist or someone tells you acupuncture is not an effective treatment and it's hocus pocus, they're out of tune with science and they're not following the science and they're not telling you what's really safe and effective versus some of the other nonsense that they do parrot as safe and effective. But moving on, acupuncture is a very effective way to control pain, to help with pain, and a very safe, non-invasive way of doing so. So I just want to share some of the science that has proved acupuncture works. So when we're talking about pain, we're talking about getting inflammation under control, usually reducing muscle spasms, and gating pain neurologically. Those are three main things where we have in our body to control pain levels, right? We don't feel everything that hurts us because we have to function. And our body does these things regularly until it can't do it anymore and then it needs help. So acupuncture is coming in, helping the body do what it does naturally, but amplifying it by tuning into different organ functions and different meridians that they travel throughout the body. This is very well established, all right? So section 1 here we're going to talk about is reducing inflammation. I'm going to just go off this study here. There's multiple studies for each point I'm trying to make here, but I'm just going to give you some quick synopsis of these studies. Study 1 is acupuncture triggers an anti-inflammatory dopaminergic pathway via the vagus adrenal axis. This is a study done in 2022 by the National Institute of Health. So the study demonstrated that acupuncture at stomach 36 activates the vagus nerve and adrenal medulla, leading to increased dopamine and release anti-inflammatory effects. They also found significant reductions in inflammatory cytokines, tissue necrosis factor, interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta were observed up to 70% within 2 hours post-treatment. That's a very large improvement in reduction of inflammation. This supports the idea that acupuncture doesn't just work locally, but triggers a systemic anti-inflammatory response, making it ideal for chronic pain rooted in inflammation. That's one study there. There was another one done that we have here, and it was a rodent model, but they found that acupuncture interrupts the inflammatory signaling in the nervous system to relieve pain, and they activated gallbladder 34 and stomach 36, which are points used in a lot of pain treatments for many patients. In that study, pain threshold is improved by 45%, with benefits lasting more than 72 hours post-treatment. What is the relevance of that? Why is that important? Because there's not a pain pill you can take that's going to give you 72 hours of relief, right? If you're using over-the-counter NSAIDs, you're looking at every 4 hours. And as you dose that every 4 hours, your liver and your kidneys and your stomach are taking that hit every 4 hours, right? And you're not activating your body's own way of healing. You're blocking the signal to your brain that there is inflammation. Sometimes that may be needed, but is that effective? Is it whole? Is it safe? For a little while maybe, but eventually the consequences of the NSAIDs will creep up, and that's something you don't want to try to treat one problem and cause another. So that's my take on that aspect. Section 2, and what I want to break down is activating spinal reflex arcs. So there was a study here, mechanism of acupuncture for neuropathic pain and the role of afferent fibers. Afferent fibers are information going from your brain to your body, right? Well, this review outlines how acupuncture stimulates A beta fibers, which send signal to inhibitory neurons in the spinal cord, closing the pain gate. It leads to a 40% reduction in spinal cord windup and long-term potentiation, key markers of chronic pain. This highlights how acupuncture modulates spinal reflex is to regulate pain perception at the level of the nervous system. So a lot of pain is neurologically controlled, mediated, and governed. And acupuncture, along with chiropractic, actually activates spinal reflex. These spinal reflexes are things where your spine will recognize a pain sensory stimulus, and it'll gate that pain. By gating it, meaning it'll reduce the signal to the brain and reduce the perception of that pain signal. So what acupuncture does is it's activating this gate theory of pain that we all have to some extent. Sometimes it gets overwhelmed, right? And that's when the pain is unbearable, and that's when you need to get these natural interventions. And I'll speak a little more about that in this next section, where we're going to talk about decreasing muscle spasms neurologically. Muscle spasms are a neurological issue. So you can massage a muscle that is in spasm, and you may calm it down for a little while, but then it's going to tighten right back up. I have a lot of patients come in and say, it's tight. I think it's muscular. I think it's muscular. And if you've ever actually injured a muscle and rested for a couple of weeks, it tends to get better and go away. A great example of a muscular injury is you went to the gym, you did a new exercise for the first time, and then you wake up sore the next day. That's an injured muscle, like delayed onset muscle soreness, but muscles repair from that and it goes away, and eventually you adapt and you continue training hard. A muscle that's constantly tight, tension in your neck, your low back constantly being locked up, that's not muscular. Muscles only do what nerves are telling them to do, and that's what your brain is sending through the nerves down to the body. A lot of times a muscle spasm is just a defense mechanism for an injured area in the body. So the only thing you have to guard and support your skeletal system is the muscles. So if muscles are locking up in an area, it's usually to protect that region because that area is out of balance, or there's some nerve irritation or inflammation, and your body's trying to stabilize that area via spasms. Now, the spasms are uncomfortable, they don't feel good, but the consequences for some of these injuries, if you didn't have spasms, would be even more intense pain than just the spasm itself. Just a little tip, if you constantly have tight muscles, or you constantly are pointing to your traps and thinking like, oh, my muscles are tight, it's most likely a neurological issue, which ultimately ends up going back to your spine, because your spine is your central nervous system. So with that said, here's a study, mechanisms of acupuncture in radicular pain, modulation of inflammatory signaling and spasm reduction. Radicular pain is like what most people call sciatica. Pain radiating down a nerve root, perhaps into your arm, numbness and tingling in the fingers, pain down the back of your leg, pain down the front of your leg, tingling in your foot. That's radicular pain. And it's arising from a nerve root in your central nervous system in the spinal cord. So again, we're talking neurologically driven mechanisms of the body and not just blood flow, which acupuncture is blood flow, but it goes above that. It actually has direct impacts on your central nervous system. And we're talking about central nervous system because that is how pain is perceived, controlled, and downregulated. So pain is a neurological thing, right? Resulting from blood flow. So in this study, patient results showed a 65% increase in blood flow and a clear drop in abnormal muscle firing. By improving circulation and reducing inflammation, acupuncture helps break the cycle of chronic muscle spasm and pain. The second study here done, electroacupuncture of post-stroke spasticity, a meta-analysis of clinical trials. So a meta-analysis is when they take a whole bunch of studies and then they put them together and they analyze all the studies together to come up with a more robust conclusion based on the data that is out there across various different researchers. So this study, a presentation talking points, right, were meta-analysis of 17 clinical trials, found that electroacupuncture significantly reduced muscle spasticity in stroke survivors, 32% more than rehab alone. And before I get onto these next 2 points, 32% more than rehab alone. Most stroke patients spend probably a year doing rehab, physical rehab, which is necessary and needed. But if we can show with research that the muscle spasticity in a stroke survivor is 32% greater in reduction with acupuncture than going and doing rehab exercises 3 times a week, we're really overlooking a massive, massive intervention that can help stroke patients recover. Hopefully this information is getting out there and more people are getting it. But I know back when I was doing my time in physical therapy and education, it was all rehab. They never once mention acupuncture to help these patients. And that's really a disservice to the patient. The sooner you can get someone better, the sooner you should. It improved neural conduction and reflex control with sustained results at 3-month follow-up. So it was sustainable. It kept the results stayed. This shows acupuncture is a neurologically based tool for calming overactive muscles and restoring motor function, which is what I was just talking about. Everyone who thinks their muscles are tight or injured. Overactive is a better way to describe that, because overactive means they're being stimulated by the nerves, ultimately from the brain, to be that way. So people really have to start wrapping their heads around the fact that you're not muscles that do whatever they want. And this is an important issue. It's an important issue that I talk with a lot of new patients about who come in and they say, I think it's muscular. It's not. It rarely is. It never is. If it was muscular, you would have probably been better in a couple of weeks and back to doing what you're doing, and you wouldn't be in my office. If it was something you could stretch out, you would have stretched and got better. It's not that we don't know how to stretch. It's not that like we aren't in tune with our muscles. We don't know what's actually going on, and we don't know what's causing it. And that's why you need to get into a chiropractor or acupuncturist, physical therapist with a high knowledge. These constant pathways that people are talking about being muscular. Muscles are great. I love muscles. They're the lowest order of control in your body, right? It's your brain first, it's the nerves second, it's the blood flow, and then the muscles are the lowest on the totem pole. So if your action or your attempt to resolve a musculoskeletal issue or to resolve shoulder pain, back pain, neck pain, is you just focusing on the muscles, you're working at the lowest scientific level you could to possibly deal with this. You don't have to ignore the muscles. They do become an issue with a chronic injury. But something that you're feeling frequently that's not resolved within a couple of weeks is not muscular. And I've thousands of times seen this, and thousands of times seen patients be like, oh my God, like we finally treated the nervous system and the muscles are calmed down. And I've done so many massages, I've been stretching. That's not the issue. Those are all good. You need to do that, but you need to understand your body is your brain, it's your nerves, your spinal cord, and it's the blood flow. Those things are so much more important than this. Your muscles are just responding to all those higher signals, okay? So some takeaways. Systemic and neural inflammation. Acupuncture downregulates pro-inflammatory mediators both centrally and peripherally, easing inflammatory pain. What does that mean? It means acupuncture gets rid of downregulates, basically controls and gates those pro-inflammatory mediators centrally and peripherally meaning in the brain and throughout the body. So the whole person. We have our central nervous system, and then we have the periphery, which is everything outside of the brain and spinal cord. And acupuncture works in both of those areas. So it works the whole body, right? Spinal and supraspinal modulation. Needling, acupuncture needles, activates A beta fibers and the periaqueductal gray and the rostroventral medial nucleus axis in the medulla, closing the pain gate and boosting endogenous opioids. So basically, acupuncture activates parts of your brain that shoot signals down into the body, and then it boosts endogenous opioids. So what are endogenous opioids? Those are things we make within ourselves, like enkephalins, endorphins, right? Endorphins are opioids. Those are natural. Your body makes opioids, right? The opiate thing is an important thing to talk about, because why are people so easily addicted to opioids? Because we make them, we like them. That's when the body's healing, it's doing it. It's a natural defense thing. So it's very easy to become addicted to opioids, right? Better to turn on your own opioid production. So the concept of opiates isn't some foreign thing to our body. We make them. We need them. They make us feel good. They relax us. They calm us. But we can make them internally. And acupuncture is a great substitute for taking external opioids. All right? So that was a big point I like to elaborate on a little there. Neuromuscular relaxation. By restoring perfusion and modulating spinal reflex loops, acupuncture disrupts the muscle spasm cycle. So by getting perfusion is blood flow, getting blood flow and modulating those spinal reflex loops, which is those arcs in the spinal cord that kind of override pain signals and dull the signal of pain to the brain, acupuncture breaks the muscle spasm cycle. So nowhere in this did it say going into a muscle and telling the muscle anything, really. It was all geared towards going towards the nervous system to have those downstream effects on the muscle. This isn't a video to shit on people who think muscles are something that need addressed. It's a video to raise your knowledge that muscles are the lowest order of control in pain. And why is that the case? Because I think we feel what we feel. If you don't know neuroscience, you don't know physiology, you don't know certain biomechanic principles, we're going to think everything we feel in our body is muscular. This video is an awakening to understand that acupuncture treats the whole person, treats the whole body, and that your muscles are important, but they're real resilient. They could take a lot, and your muscles are responding to what your brain is telling them to do. So use your brain and get a treatment that actually deals with that issue. All right, guys, acupuncture is phenomenal. I can't say how many times it's blown my own mind as a practitioner. Patients I've seen who I thought would take weeks to get better, getting up and walking out after one visit, feeling much better. I've been doing this forever and it still blows my mind, the effectiveness of it. Whether or not you believe in it means nothing. And the people who don't believe in it probably just haven't done it. I wouldn't take anyone's word, something they've never actually done. All right, guys, be well.